Hey folks, what's up? It's Adam here, aka To See the Guy. Right, this movie review was a movie that came out of the year of 1988. I was only 1 year old when this was made. It's a fun little movie. Again, the movie's not on too long, 86 minutes, which is kind of a shame. Now this movie, of course I'm going to get into it because I'm a big fan of clowns. You know, I love killer clowns, I love horror clowns, any types of clowns. I think clowns are great characters. You can make any type of movie or story you want with them. Some have failed, some have been successful. You know, this film was a success. Came in the year 1998, like I already mentioned, and its exact release date, as I'm just looking up now, is May 27th of 1988. Yeah, distributed by Transworld Entertainment. Right off the bat, the music was made by John Massari, and I'll tell you what, if there's one thing that I love the most about this movie, it's the music by the Dickies. I love that intro song, the do 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 do. You better watch out for the killer clowns. Goes something like that. I know I did a bad impression, just but still, there's a catchy song to this film, and I absolutely love it. It's all over YouTube in different versions, but there's one version on YouTube that's done by the Dickies, and I think it's a really classy song. I mean, you could tell it was made in the 80s. It had that great 80s feel to it. But this movie overall has a great 80s feeling to it. You could tell it was made in the 80s just by the graphics and the creativity side of things. We don't make movies like this anymore, especially killer clown movies. And it's this movie right here, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And yes, I have it on Blu-ray. Just like most of these Blu-rays, you had the choice of which cover you wanted. This is like the 80s cover. This is the poster I love best. The other one was kind of childish and cartoonish for my liking. It was more of like, you'd have the three clowns on the front behind the circus, in front of the circus tent, and I don't know, it looked kind of cartoonish. I didn't really like it. I love the original 80s poster. And just by looking at the poster on the front, you could tell it was an 80s film, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You know, why the fuck would you want a Blu-ray of a great 80s movie only to have like your typical this generation poster on the front? Why the fuck would you want that? It takes everything away from the movie, even the look of it. This poster is a classic. The fact the Killer Clown's got the Planet Earth spinning on his finger is a great 80s look. It's got the great 80s music, great 80s atmosphere. Everything about this movie is 80s all over. 80s is written all over this movie. And that's one thing I'd give this movie a lot of respect for. The fact that it involves killer clowns is another big factor of mine. A lot of people made fun of these clowns in this movie, but it depends really how much you take them seriously in this movie. I mean, overall, it's a horror. Well, I should say it's sort of a horror, but it's a PG-13, movie. And everyone knows I'm totally against all this PG-13 bullshit. It spoils everything. It spoils the great factor of like the adult themed stuff. But for a PG-13 movie, they got away with a lot of shit in this movie. I've seen lots of reviews on this, and one thing that people always point out is that it's a PG-13 movie, yet it got out with a lot of crazy shit. And back then, in the 80s, you could get away with a lot of crazy shit. That's what I like, and the creativity as well, like I've already just mentioned. So it's this webcam better. It's better so you can see me better. Like I say, the movies today focus on the wrong things now. They focus on reboots, remakes. I don't know why film industries remake things that don't need remaking. And when they do remake, they're nowhere near as good as the originals anyway. I prefer to remember movies for being the originals. And think about it, with remakes, all you're doing is fucking remaking something that's already been done, but just from someone else's own imagination, and bringing it into this generation, which just quite frankly doesn't work. Don't fuck with the originals, as the old saying goes. But anyway, this movie, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, is a classic. It's a cult classic. And the plot's very straightforward and simple. The concept of it taking place in this little town. Spaceship goes by in the sky. These teenagers and these young people, you know, want to know what the fuck's going on. So they investigate, they go to this field. And they come across this spaceship that's in the shape of a circus tent. And inside the spaceship, of course, is the killer clowns. And the killer clowns have got one intention in mind, that's come to planet Earth to make all the human life forces, you know, a big meal of theirs. And they've got unique ways of doing it. I know I've already mentioned the creativity of this, but it's got your cheesy, creative minds like someone would have in the 80s. The fact that the killer clowns use popcorn guns that shoot popcorn. The fact that they turn people into cotton candy, candy floss, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, and it liquidates them, you know, like turns them into human jelly, and they like suck all the insides out of people with straws and things like that. Sounds pretty sick, but it's still a PG-13 movie. Yet with all the shit they got away with in this movie was unreal. There are some sick scenes in this movie. Sick up to the point where you wouldn't even believe it's a PG-13 movie. But they got away with it, and that's one of the classic things about the 80s, this shit they got away with. I mean, like I say now, these killer clowns are now on the loose in this small town, and they want to make all these humans their victims. Before they go back to their planet, they want to use human life forms as part of their meal, basically, because they're hungry clowns. They got this desire for human flesh, but liquidise them in this cotton candy, so they can suck all their insides out like jelly. Fucking bizarre movie, but it's fun. It's a fun 80s movie. Some people call these clowns in this movie scary, some will call them funny, some will call them ridiculous because of how they look. But don't forget it's an 80s movie. The bound to look silly and ridiculous, and plus the clowns all over. But the way the costumes are fucking great in this movie. The costume designs, I take my props off them for that. The fact that it's like a crazy, fucked up looking clown. There's loads of them. There's loads of different shapes and sizes of these clowns. One's a fat one. One's a tall, skinny one. One looks as though he's high. You know, loads of things in this movie. But like I said, I've already mentioned, I like the poster, the music, and the fact that it's got its 80s theme written all over it. I mean, the things that they did get away with in this movie, for example, I mean, the scene where there's all them bikers and the clown is riding his bicycle, and the biker's like, "What you gonna do? You're gonna knock my block off?" And the little clown's got these boxing gloves on. He punches the guy in the fucking face, and off flies his head. And all the bikers freak out and they get the hell out of there. So there's a scene where one of the clowns decapitates this biker. There's a scene where a clown is like doing some shadows on the wall with his hands, like making a bunny, a dinosaur, or whatever the fuck. But then he like makes like this this T-Rex or this some sort of animal, and he swallows all these people whole in the shadows, just using his hands like in the shadows, and he swallows all these people whole. There's a scene in the police station where this asshole cop is like, "They're not going to use me as a dummy." And then believe one of the killer clowns does. He puts his hand up his back and he controls him like a ventriloquist dummy. Like as if he's talking to a normal copper. But he pulls his arm out, you can hear a slushing sound, his arm is all covered in blood. So he's been working his brains and all his mouth form like as if it's a ventriloquist dummy. So you do get your sick scenes. Same in the jail cell when there's that bloody arm and he's surrounded with cotton candy. You know, the film does have its scenes of sick scenes. And there's some scenes in this movie that are disturbing as well. I mean, the one that stuck out in my mind the most was when that weird clown is outside that fast food restaurant and a little girl's staring at him and the clown's like, "Come here." He's like trying to guide the little girl to come close to him. And behind him he's got like this big mallet ready to squash her into little pieces. So it does have its freaky scenes in this movie. So it has a mixture of everything in this movie. Use of comedy, freaking out scenes, horror, over the top, imaginative, fucking bizarre scenes. It's got great music, great 80s feel to it. It's got the making of everything in an 80s film that you'd want to see. I mean, it is over the top, I admit, it's way over the top. There's like fucking popcorn guns and turning human nature into fucking cotton candy so they can suck all their insides like jelly. Come on. Again, it's coming from the creative idea of the 80s. You would not get away with that shit today. And that's what I love so much about this generation, the 80s generation. If I could travel back in time and live through a generation where horrors were at its peak and when that was all coming out, like the likes of Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Halloween, I'd go back to like the late 70s and be born in the 80s where the 80s were best at its horror and live all through them generations when all these movies were coming out. I would have loved to have been through that generation. Today's generation of horror is just fucking wank. It's all reboots and all that shit. But these years of horror was magical. If you like to live back in the 80s and you agree with me when I said the 80s movies were the best, this is a prime example, and I want you to check this out if you haven't done so already. Killer Klowns from Outer Space is just a bizarre, over the top, hard not to like, bizarre movie. I could come up with loads of words to describe this movie, but the exact words to describe this movie have not been invented yet because there's so much stuff in it that you can't explain. I mean, yeah, it's easy plot-wise about killer clowns fucking capturing human life form to take with them back to their own planet so they can eat them. In their spaceship, they've got like this little factory where they hang them up in cotton candy cocoons, and they put straws in them and they suck out all the flesh of the human bodies that they've got wrapped up in these cocoons. So hilarious at times, bizarre at times, scary at times, but just enjoyable overall, in my opinion. I have to admit, I did not quite like the ending of this movie. The scene where they're inside the spaceship and they're battling all them clowns. It was kind of over the top, but they went way overboard with their cheesiness. I mean, to think they could get away with all these cheesy scenes throughout the whole movie, let's go to cheesiness at its extreme. Let's hit rock bottom with it. And they had this big battle with this giant clown and all that shit. I wasn't really into that. My favourite part of the movie was from start to like the late middle. That was my favourite part of the movie. The ending, I suppose, is alright, but I was kind of expecting it for a film like this, but at the same time, I thought they could have done a better job in the ending. I was less entertained by all that shit at the end, but at the end of the day, it was still a good film overall, and I really did enjoy it. Proud to have it on Blu-ray. It's great to see this movie on Blu-ray. Why they didn't make no sequels to this, I will never fucking understand. But I've checked it out on Wikipedia, and according to the resources on here, it's already said that in the critical reception, the film was considered a cult classic. Scored 77% based on 22 critic reviews. It's dark, goofy, and fun. But there's a big, chapter on this page about the legacy and its possible sequels. They was planning on making a sequel back in 2005, didn't do it. Then there was another one in 2012, a planned sequel, they didn't do it then. And then the latest one in 25th of July 2019. It says it is announced that Killer Klowns from Outer Space will return to Universal Orlando annual Halloween Horror Nights evening for a second consecutive year. The time the characters would feature in a haunted house attraction rather than see Scare Zone, in which they appeared in 2018. And during this year, it was announced that Sci-Fi was in talks to acquire the rights to Killer Klowns from Outer Space and the Critters franchise in order to produce new sequels to both properties. I'm not looking forward to seeing new sequels to the Critters movies because there's too many of them already and not many of them I don't like. In my opinion, I've left this too late. I want to remember this movie how it is, an 80s cult classic. To see Killer Klowns from Outer Space come out in this generation, a sequel, I don't think it would work. Because the atmosphere would be different. Of course, we can easily make things better in the technology world. It would be too easy to make. It was magical for what they did. The budget they got and the effort they put into it in terms of being in the 80s. That's my argument. If I was going to make a sequel, they should have made it a lot more earlier. In my opinion, they've left it too late now. People aren't going to remember what Killer Klowns from Outer Space is, at least in this new generation. I suppose it will encourage more people to watch the original film if they did make a sequel, but at the same time, I don't think it would work. I want to remember this movie as an 80s classic. I don't want to remember it for being in this generation. No more sequels, and definitely don't want to see a remake, which there was a lot of rumours going around for what that was going to do to that as well. But it's 2019, we'd expect they're going to remake all the good movies, aren't they? So fingers crossed, let's hope they don't remake something like this. Okay. Please like, rate and comment this, everyone. Email if you've got any questions. I know there's loads of fans out there for Clowns from Outer Space. They say it's one of the best clown movies ever made in the 80s. In some aspects, I find that hard to disagree with, basically. It is a fun little movie. I wouldn't rank it as extremely scary or anything like that. It does have its moments of scariness, but I like to remember it as a fun, creative comedy, basically, this movie. So leave all your thoughts below and email me if you've got any questions. And hopefully we can get a conversation or a little base going where we're actually talking about the topics of this movie. I'm always willing to talk about this movie. It's worth talking about. Thanks, everyone. Peace out.